I... I have one more paper, Your Honor. My voice sounded small in the big courtroom, but my hands were steady. The room smelled like old wood and paper. The ceiling lights were bright, almost too bright, like they wanted to make sure no one could hide anything. People filled the seats behind us. Strangers waiting for their own cases, a few lawyers, and some curious eyes who liked watching other people's problems. I stood alone at one table. At the other table sat my husband, or soon-to-be ex-husband, Adrian. Next to him was Bianca. She wore a tight red dress and shiny heels that clicked loudly whenever she moved. Her hand rested on Adrian's arm like she had already won a prize. She looked at me the way people look at old clothes they plan to throw away. Adrian looked happy, relaxed, almost excited. Like this was a party. Judge Halim, looked down at us over his glasses. His face was serious, the kind of face that had seen too many broken promises. "Mrs. Nora," he said, "you are in agreement with the divorce terms already signed?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said softly. Adrian let out a short laugh beside me. I heard Bianca whisper, "See? I told you she wouldn't fight." My ears burned, but I didn't turn. Judge Halim nodded. "And you, Mr. Adrian?" "Absolutely, Your Honor," Adrian said quickly. We both agreed. Everything is clear. Everything is clear. If only he knew. I held the white sheet of paper in my hand. It looked plain. Nothing special. Just one simple page. But it felt heavier than a book. "I just have one more document I would like to give the court," I said. Adrian actually chuckled. "A document?" he said, loud enough for people to hear. "Nora." "What now? A recipe? A shopping list?" A few people in the room gave small, nervous laughs. Bianca covered her mouth, smiling. "Maybe a love letter," she whispered. I walked forward slowly and handed the paper to the court clerk, who passed it to the judge. Judge Halim took it and began to read. At first, his face didn't change. Then his eyebrows moved closer together. He leaned forward. He read it again. And then, suddenly, he gave a short, surprised laugh. Not a happy laugh. A shocked one. "Wow," he said. "This is very interesting." The whole courtroom went quiet. I could hear my own heartbeat. Adrian stopped smiling. "What is it?" Bianca whispered, tugging his sleeve. He didn't answer. Judge Halim looked at Adrian over his glasses. "Mr. Adrian, did you know about this?" Adrian blinked. "Know about what?" "Your Honor?" The judge tapped the paper lightly. "This?" Adrian swallowed. I saw his jaw tighten. I'm not sure what you're talking about." I didn't say anything. I just stood there, hands folded. Bianca leaned closer to him. "Babe, what is it?" she asked again, softer now. He pulled his arm away from her without looking at her. That was the first time I saw fear in his eyes that day. Judge Halim read a few more lines, then looked back at me. "Mrs. Nora, you are saying this document is real and valid?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said. "I have the original copy at home. This is a certified copy." The judge nodded slowly. "I see." Adrian suddenly stood up. "Your Honor, I think there must be some mistake. She doesn't understand business documents. She was just a housewife." Just a housewife. Those words didn't hurt anymore. Well, Judge Halim raised a hand. "Sit down, Mr. Adrian." Adrian sat, but his face had lost all color. His hands were gripping the table so tightly, his knuckles turned white. Bianca looked between him and the judge. "Can someone please say what is going on?" she asked, her voice not so confident now. No one answered her. I looked straight ahead, at the judge, at the paper, at the moment I had waited for. 15 years of marriage, 15 years of cooking meals, washing clothes, helping with homework, smiling at business partners, staying quiet during insults. All of it led to this one white sheet of paper. Judge Halim placed the paper down carefully. This court will need to review this document closely, he said. This changes certain things. Changes what? Adrian asked quickly. The judge didn't reply right away. He looked at Adrian for a long second, like he was trying to understand how a man could sit so confidently while standing on weak ground. Mr. Adrian, he said finally, I suggest you speak with your lawyer immediately. Adrian turned to his lawyer, whispering fast. The lawyer read the paper, and his eyes widened. He looked at Adrian. Why didn't you tell me about this? He hissed. I don't know what that is, Adrian shot back. She's trying to trick us. I almost smiled. Trick. If only he remembered. Behind us, I heard soft whispers from the people watching. Bianca crossed her arms. This is ridiculous, she said. She's just trying to get more money. I turned my head slowly and looked at her for the first time that day. She stopped talking. Maybe it was the way I looked at her, calm, not angry, not sad, certain. Judge Halim spoke again. We will take a short recess. Court will resume shortly. He stood up and left the room with the paper in his hand. The room filled with noise immediately. Adrian stood and turned to me. What did you do? He demanded in a low, angry voice. Nothing, I said. Just gave the court a paper. You think you're smart? He snapped. You don't even understand half of what you sign. I tilted my head slightly. Are you sure about that? He stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. Bianca stepped forward. Adrian, let's go talk outside, she said, but he shook her off. No, I want to know what game she's playing. I picked up my bag calmly. There's no game, I said. Only truth. His lawyer touched his arm. We need to talk, now. They walked away quickly, whispering hard. Bianca hesitated, then followed them, her heels clicking fast on the floor. I stayed where I was, alone, but for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small. I sat down slowly and looked at my hands. No shaking, no fear, just quiet strength. Across the room, my son Leo sat beside my friend, Mrs. Dada. He looked worried, but when our eyes met, I gave him a small smile. He smiled back. He didn't know everything yet, but one day he would understand. I looked toward the door where the judge had left, holding that simple white paper. 15 years ago, I signed something with love and trust. Today, that same signature was speaking for me. And this time, everyone was finally listening. 2 years earlier, my life still looked normal from the outside. We had dinner at the same table every night. Our son Leo talked about school. I asked about homework. Adrian scrolled through his phone. At first, I told myself he was just tired. Running a business is hard. I wanted to be understanding. For 15 years, that had been my role. To understand, to adjust, to support. But little things began to change. Adrian used to come home at 6 p.m. sharp. Then it became 7, then 8. Soon, some nights, he didn't come home until after Leo was asleep. Big client meeting, he would say, not looking at me. One evening, Leo pushed his food around his plate and asked, Mom, is Dad mad at us? The question hit me like cold water. Why would you think that? I asked gently. He doesn't laugh anymore, Leo said. He used to laugh at my jokes. I forced a smile. Adults just get busy sometimes. But deep down, I felt the distance too. Adrian stopped telling me about his day. If I asked how work went, he gave one-word answers. Fine. Busy. Tiring. His phone became more important than everything else. He took it everywhere, even to the bathroom, even to throw the trash outside. At night, the screen would light up beside him in bed. He would quickly turn it away from me. One night, I reached over and touched his arm. Is everything okay at work? He moved my hand away without looking at me. Nora, please, I'm exhausted. Don't start. Don't start. I lay awake long after he fell asleep, staring at the ceiling in the dark. I didn't cry. Not yet. A week later, we attended a company dinner. Adrian told me to wear something nicer than usual. I spent extra time getting ready. I wore a blue dress he once said made my eyes look bright. When we arrived, he walked ahead of me instead of beside me. Inside the restaurant, he introduced me to a group of people. "This is my wife, Nora," he said quickly, like he was finishing a task. Then he turned back to the group and talked about profits and investments, leaving me standing there holding my purse. A woman beside me smiled politely. "How long have you two been married?" "Almost 15 years, I said. Her eyes widened slightly. "Oh, I thought—" She stopped talking. "Thought what?" I asked gently. She shook her head. "Nothing." But I knew. I saw the way the younger women looked at Adrian. I saw the way he stood taller when they laughed at his jokes. That night, in the car, I said quietly, "You didn't talk to me much tonight." "I was networking," he said. "That's how business works." "I understand," I said. "I just felt a little alone." He sighed loudly. "You're too sensitive lately." Too sensitive. That was the first time he said something like that. After that, it became common. If I asked a question, I was sensitive. If I looked sad, I was dramatic. If I stayed quiet, I was cold. There was no right way for me to be anymore. One afternoon, while folding laundry, his phone buzzed on the table. He had left it behind by mistake. I didn't mean to look, I truly didn't. But the message showed on the screen before I could stop myself. "Bianca, I can't wait until you're finally free." My hands froze. "Free? Free from what?" "From me?" I stared at the name. Bianca. I had never heard it before. I placed the phone back exactly where it was and went back to folding clothes. My heart felt like glass, but my face stayed calm. That night, I watched him carefully. Every smile at his phone, every quick reply, every time he turned the screen away. I didn't ask him about Bianca, not yet. Instead, I took out a small notebook from my drawer. I wrote the date, and beside it, I wrote one word: Bianca. Days turned into weeks. The late nights became normal. Weekend, business trips appeared suddenly. Once, while cleaning his jacket, I found a restaurant receipt for 2 people. Expensive, romantic. The date was a night he told me he was working late at the office. I added another note to my notebook. I also started noticing money. Large amounts leaving our joint account. Transfers I didn't recognize. When I asked, he said, "Business expenses. You wouldn't understand." Maybe he thought I didn't understand numbers. But years ago, when his business was just an idea, I had helped him organize bills at our kitchen table. I had filled out forms when he was too tired. I had gone with him to open his first business account. He had forgotten. I had not. One Saturday afternoon, Leo and I were baking in the kitchen when Adrian walked in dressed nicely. "Going somewhere?" I asked. "Meeting a friend," he said. "Can we come?" Leo asked hopefully. Adrian hesitated. "It's not that kind of meeting." Leo nodded slowly. "Oh, okay." Adrian left. Leo looked at me. "Mom, is Dad going to leave us?" Children feel truth before adults admit it. I knelt down and hugged him tightly. "No matter what happens, I'm always here," I said. That night, after Leo slept, I sat at the dining table with my notebook. Dates, times, receipts, transfers. I wasn't planning revenge. I was trying to understand my own life. A few days later, I ran into an old friend, Mrs. Dada, at the market. She worked as a legal assistant. We chatted about small things at first. Then she looked at me closely. "You look tired," she said gently. I smiled. "Just life." She squeezed my hand. "If you ever need advice, legal advice, call me, even just to ask questions." I nodded. I didn't tell her everything. But that night, after Adrian fell asleep with his phone in his hand, I stepped into the living room and made a quiet call. "Hello?" Mrs. Dada answered. "I just want to understand something," I said softly. "About marriage and businesses." That was the night I stopped being only a wife who waited. It was the night I started paying attention. Not with anger, not with shouting, but with open eyes. Adrian thought I was too quiet to notice, too simple to understand, too soft to prepare. He was wrong. The day Adrian told me he wanted a divorce, the sky was bright and clear. It felt strange that the world could look so normal when my life was about to split in two. He came home earlier than usual that evening. Leo was in his room doing homework. I was in the kitchen cutting vegetables for dinner. "I need to talk to you," Adrian said. His voice was flat. No emotion. Like he was discussing the weather. I wiped my hands on a towel and nodded. "Okay." We sat at the dining table. The same table where we had celebrated birthdays, helped Leo with school projects, and once stayed up late dreaming about the future. Now Adrian didn't even look at me. "I'm not happy," he said. The words were simple, but they carried years of distance. "I think we both deserve better," he added. Both. I knew that word was not true, but I let it pass. "I want a divorce." There it was. No tears came, no shouting. Just a quiet ringing in my ears. I folded my hands together on the table so he wouldn't see them tremble. "If that's what you want," I said softly, "I won't stop you." He looked up quickly, surprised. "That's it?" I nodded. He seemed almost disappointed. Maybe he expected begging, crying, drama. Instead, I gave him peace. He leaned back in his chair. "I've already spoken to a lawyer. We can make this easy if you cooperate." Cooperate, like I was an employee. "I understand," I said. He studied my face. "You're not even going to ask why?" I met his eyes calmly. "I already know." For a second, something flickered across his face. Then it was gone. "Good," he said. "That makes things simpler." Simpler. Nothing about this was simple. That night, I lay in bed staring at the wall while he slept beside me for one of the last times. I listened to his breathing and remembered the young man who once held my hand and promised we would grow old together. I didn't cry. I just let the memories pass like quiet clouds. A week later, I saw her properly for the first time. Bianca. I was at a cafe near the shopping center, waiting for Mrs. Dada. I wasn't supposed to be there that day, but something made me choose that place instead of our usual one. And there they were. Adrian sat across from a young woman with long hair and bright lipstick. She laughed loudly, touching his hand as if she had known him forever. He looked different with her. Lighter. Younger. Like the years with me had been a heavy coat he had finally taken off. I sat behind a tall plant. They didn't see me. A waiter brought them dessert with 2 spoons. Bianca leaned forward. "So when will it be final?" she asked. "Soon," Adrian said, smiling. "She didn't fight. She knows she can't compete." My chest felt tight, but I kept breathing slowly. Bianca giggled. "I told you, she's too old to keep a man like you." Then Adrian said the words that stayed with me. "She's too old and useless for me." They both laughed. I looked down at my hands resting on my lap. Old. Useless. These were the hands that held his when he was scared to start his business. The hands that packed his lunch for years. The hands that wiped our son's tears. I stood up quietly and left, without them ever knowing I had been there. Outside, the sun felt too bright. The noise of cars sounded far away. I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. That night, Adrian came home late again. "I saw you today," I said calmly while washing dishes. He froze for half a second. "Where?" "At the cafe." He relaxed and shrugged. "Oh, yeah, that's Bianca." He said her name like he was introducing a new phone. "She makes me happy," he added. "I hope so," I said. He frowned. That's all you have to say? What else should I say? He shook his head. You're strange, Nora. Most women would be screaming. Would that change anything? I asked. He had no answer. The next few weeks moved fast. Papers arrived. Lawyers called. Dates were set. Bianca stopped hiding. She called him openly. Sometimes he put her on speaker without thinking. Once, she said, I can't wait until we live together. I want to redecorate everything. Your house looks so old. I glanced around the living room. The couch we picked together, the curtains I sewed, the family photos. Old. Leo heard some of the calls, too. He became quieter, watching his father with confused eyes. One evening, Leo asked, Dad, are you going to marry that lady? Adrian looked uncomfortable. That's adult business. Leo nodded slowly and went back to his room. Later, I found him sitting on his bed, holding a photo of the three of us from years ago. Mom, he said, did I do something wrong? I hugged him tightly. No, my love. Adults make their own choices. It's not your fault. But inside, I knew those choices would change his world forever. While Adrian planned his new life, I planned quietly too. I gathered old folders from a storage box in the closet, papers from the early days of the business, documents Adrian had signed without reading carefully because he trusted me back then. I placed them neatly in a file. I also visited the bank alone one morning. I asked for copies of certain records. The woman at the desk was polite and didn't ask questions. At night, when the house was silent, I sat at the dining table and read everything slowly, line by line, word by word. Adrian thought I was just accepting my fate. He didn't see the late-night lamplight under the kitchen door. He didn't notice the new folder in my bag. One afternoon, Bianca came to the house for the first time while Leo was at school. She stood in the doorway like she already owned the place. I just came to pick up some of Adrian's things, she said sweetly. I stepped aside. Of course. She walked through the house, looking around with small smiles. This wall color is so dark, she said. We'll definitely repaint. We. I nodded politely. Before leaving, she turned to me. I know this must be hard for you, but sometimes it's better to let go when you can't keep up. I looked at her calmly. Take care of him, I said. She seemed confused by my tone. Maybe she expected tears too. After she left, I closed the door gently. Then I walked to my room, opened my drawer, and took out one final document I had prepared. A clean white sheet of paper. Simple, quiet, powerful. I placed it on top of the folder and closed it carefully. The divorce hearing date was getting closer. Adrian thought the story was almost over. For me, it was just reaching the most important page. The house felt different after Adrian moved out. Quieter, but not peaceful. Every room carried memories like soft echoes. His shoes were gone from the doorway. His laughter, the old warm kind, no longer lived in the walls. In its place was a strange stillness, like the moment before heavy rain. Leo tried to act normal. He went to school, did his homework, and said goodnight the same way he always had. But sometimes I heard him awake long after midnight, turning in his bed. One evening, I knocked gently on his door. Can I come in? He nodded. I sat beside him. You don't have to be strong all the time, I said softly. He looked at his hands. I just don't understand how Dad changed so much. Neither did I, but I had stopped asking why. Now I focused on what was true, and the truth was hidden in paper. 2 days later, I visited Mrs. Dada at her office. It was a small building with peeling paint, but inside, everything was neat and organized. She smiled when she saw me. You look different, she said. Different good or different bad? I asked. Different strong, she replied. I sat across from her desk and placed my folder down. I need you to explain something to me, I said. She adjusted her glasses. Okay. I opened the folder and slid a document toward her. It was old, slightly yellow at the edges. Her eyes moved slowly across the page. Then she stopped. She looked up at me. Nora, where did you get this? We signed it 15 years ago, I said, when the business was just starting. She looked back down and read more carefully. This changes things, she whispered. I thought so, I said. You never told me about this. I never needed to, until now. She leaned back in her chair. Does Adrian remember signing this? I gave a small smile. Adrian never read long documents. He trusted me back then. Mrs. Dada shook her head slowly. If this is valid, and it looks valid, then the company isn't just his. I didn't feel happy hearing that. I just felt steady. For years, I had helped build that business quietly, making calls when he was busy, filling forms, organizing bills, supporting him when he wanted to quit. But when success came, he told the world he did it alone. Now the paper was ready to tell the real story. Meanwhile, Adrian was busy building his new life. Leo told me his father had taken him to see a new apartment. He said Bianca picked it, Leo said quietly. It's very white. No family pictures. I nodded. Did you like it? Leo shrugged. It didn't feel like home. Children know. Adrian began spending money faster than ever. New furniture, jewelry, trips, expensive dinners. He thought the future was already his. He didn't know the past was waiting. See, one afternoon, I sat at the dining table with bank statements spread in front of me. Transfers from the company account, payments for luxury gifts, hotel bookings, all under business expenses. I highlighted each one carefully, not with anger, with patience. Every mark was a piece of truth. Later that week, Adrian came to pick up more of his things. Bianca waited in the car outside. He walked through the house like a visitor, not a man who once lived there. I'll take the watch from the bedroom, he said. Okay, I replied. Before he left, he paused. You've been very quiet through all this. I told you, I said. I don't want to fight. He looked almost proud. That's good. It makes this easier for everyone. Easier? Yes, I said calmly. It does. He didn't notice the folder on the shelf behind me. That night, Leo brought me a drawing he made at school. It showed 3 stick figures holding hands. I know things are changing, he said, but you and me are still a team, right? I hugged him tightly. Always. His trust gave me strength. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about showing my son that quiet people are not weak. A few days before the court hearing, I made one final visit. Not to a person, to a safe deposit box at the bank. Inside, it was the original copy of the document. Perfect condition. I held it gently, remembering the day we signed it. Adrian had been nervous, excited, full of dreams. He squeezed my hand and said, "We're building this together." Back then, he meant it. I placed the original back and locked the box. The copy in my folder would be enough for now. Mrs. Dada called me that evening. I double-checked everything, she said. The document is legal. The signatures are clear. The date is right. Nora, he really forgot what he signed. I didn't, I said. She laughed softly in disbelief. You've been sitting on this for years? I never thought I would need it. You're full of surprises. No, I said gently. I just remember things. On the night before the hearing, the house was very quiet. Leo slept early. I sat alone in the living room, the folder beside me. 15 years of memories passed through my mind. Our small first apartment, counting coins to buy groceries, Adrian staying up late planning his business, me bringing him tea and telling him not to give up. We were a team once, but somewhere along the way, he started believing he had climbed alone. Tomorrow, the truth would speak. Not loudly, but clearly. At the same time, across town, Adrian and Bianca were at a fancy restaurant. Bianca raised a glass. "To new beginnings," she said. Adrian smiled. "To freedom." He felt powerful, successful, untouchable. His phone buzzed with a message from his lawyer, asking to review some final details in the morning. He ignored it. Nothing could go wrong now. He had already won. Or so he thought. Back in my quiet house, I opened the folder one last time. On top was the white sheet of paper I had prepared for the judge. Simple, direct, impossible to ignore. I read it slowly, making sure every word was clear. Then I placed it back and closed the folder. I turned off the lights and stood in the dark living room for a moment. I didn't feel revenge. I didn't feel hate. I felt balance. For years I had been silent. Tomorrow, paper would speak for me. And paper does not forget. The courtroom felt smaller than before. Or maybe it was just that the truth had filled all the empty space. I sat at my table, hands resting calmly in front of me. Leo sat in the back beside Mrs. Dada, his eyes moving between me and his father. Adrian looked tired. Not the tired of hard work, the tired of worry. His suit was sharp, but his confidence from the last hearing was gone. Bianca sat behind him today, not beside him. Her arms were crossed, her bright smile missing. Judge Halim entered, holding a folder. The same folder. Everyone stood, then sat again. The judge adjusted his glasses. "We will continue the divorce proceedings of Mr. Adrian and Mrs. Nora. The court has reviewed the additional document submitted last session." The room was silent. Adrian's lawyer cleared his throat. "Your Honor, we believe there has been a misunderstanding regarding that document." Judge Halim raised an eyebrow. "A misunderstanding that lasted 15 years?" No one spoke. The judge turned to Adrian. "Mr. Adrian, I will ask you a simple question. When you started your company, did your wife assist you with the registration process?" Adrian shifted in his seat. "She helped with small things, nothing major." Judge Halim opened the file. "Did she sign documents with you at that time?" "Yes, but those were just formalities." "Formalities?" the judge repeated. "Interesting word." He held up a copy of the document. "This paper shows that Mrs. Nora was listed as a co-founding partner in the original business registration. It also states that ownership shares could not be transferred or removed without her written consent." A murmur spread across the courtroom. Bianca's head snapped toward Adrian. "What does that mean?" she whispered. Adrian didn't answer. His lawyer leaned toward him urgently. "You told me she wasn't involved." "I didn't remember this," Adrian hissed back. I watched quietly. 15 years ago, we had sat at a small plastic table in a tiny office. The lawyer back then explained that listing both our names would make things easier if anything happened to one of us. Adrian squeezed my hand and said, "We're a team. What's mine is yours." He forgot. Paper did not. Judge Halim continued. "This also connects to financial records the court reviewed. Large company funds were used for personal expenses unrelated to business operations." He looked directly at Adrian. "Luxury gifts, travel, private apartment furnishings." Bianca slowly removed her hand from Adrian's shoulder. "That's normal executive spending," Adrian said quickly. "On your mistress?" the judge asked calmly. The word hung heavy in the air. Adrian had no answer. Bianca looked like she wanted to disappear. Judge Halim turned to me. "Mrs. Nora, did you know you were still legally listed as co-owner of the company?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said gently. "And you never signed anything giving up your share?" "No, Your Honor." Adrian suddenly stood. "This is ridiculous. She never worked a day in that office." I finally looked at him. "I worked every day," I said quietly, "just not behind a desk." He froze. I continued, my voice steady. I handled early supplier calls when you were overwhelmed. I organized invoices. I met the accountant with you. I signed the first lease papers. I believed we were building a future together. The courtroom was completely still. You told me none of that mattered once money came. I added softly, but the law remembers what people forget. Leo's eyes filled with tears in the back row. Judge Halim nodded slowly. Marriage is a partnership. So is a business started during that marriage, especially when documents clearly say so. He shuffled the papers again. Furthermore, Mr. Adrian, using company funds for personal relationships without co-owner approval is a serious matter. Adrian's face had gone pale again, just like the day I handed over the white paper. Bianca leaned away from him, whispering, "You said everything was clean." He didn't even look at her. Judge Halim spoke clearly. This court recognizes Mrs. Nora as legal co-owner of the company from its foundation. Any division of assets must reflect that ownership. Adrian's lawyer buried his face in his hands. And regarding the misuse of business funds, the judge continued, this will require further financial review. There may be penalties. Adrian sat down slowly, like his legs could no longer hold him. For the first time since he asked for the divorce, he looked small. Not powerful, not confident. Just a man who had forgotten who helped him climb. Bianca stood up suddenly. "I didn't know about any of this," she said quickly. "I thought he was already divorced in everything but name." The judge gave her a brief look. "You are not on trial today, miss. Please sit." She sat. But she did not touch Adrian again. Judge Halim looked back at me. "Mrs. Nora, do you have anything further to add?" I thought for a moment. 15 years of love, 2 years of quiet pain, months of careful preparation. "I never wanted to destroy him," I said. "I just wanted the truth to be seen." The judge nodded. Truth has a way of finding its moment. Leo suddenly stood from the back, then hesitated. I gave him a small nod. He didn't speak, but his eyes said everything. He saw now. His mother had not been weak. She had been patient. Judge Halim closed the file. This court will finalize the divorce with asset division reflecting equal ownership of the business and shared marital property. Financial investigations into company spending will continue. The sound of his gavel echoed sharply. It was over. Not with shouting, not with revenge. With paper. Adrian remained seated as people began to leave. Bianca walked out first, fast, without looking back. His lawyer spoke to him in a low, urgent voice, but Adrian just stared at the table. I gathered my things slowly. When I stood, Adrian looked up at me. "How long did you know?" he asked. "A long time," I said. "Why didn't you say anything?" I held his gaze. "Because you stopped listening." He looked down again. I walked toward the back where Leo waited. He wrapped his arms around me tightly. "I'm proud of you, Mom," he whispered. I kissed his hair. "We're going to be okay." Mrs. Dada smiled at us. "More than okay," she said. As we walked out of the courtroom, sunlight poured through the tall windows. For the first time in years, my steps felt light. Not because I had won, but because I had finally been seen. And sometimes, being seen is the greatest victory of all. Life did not become perfect after the courtroom day, but it became honest. Adrian moved into a smaller apartment alone. Bianca disappeared from his life as quickly as she had entered it. The fancy dinners and big smiles were gone. Now he had time to think. Time to remember the years he once called simple, but were actually full of love. The business changed too. With the court's decision, I became officially involved. Not because I wanted power, but because I wanted fairness. I hired people I trusted. I made sure the company helped families, not just bank accounts. Leo adjusted slowly. Some days were hard, but we talked more. We cooked dinner together. We laughed again. The house felt warm, not heavy. One evening, Leo looked at me and said, "Mom, you didn't fight with shouting, but you still won." I smiled. "Winning isn't about hurting someone," I told him. "It's about standing up for what is right, even when you are quiet." Months later, Adrian asked to meet at a cafe. He looked older, humbler. "I forgot who was beside me when I had nothing," he said. "I'm sorry." I nodded. "I hope you become a better man from this." We didn't go back to how things were. Some doors close forever. But forgiveness opened a small window for peace. As I walked home that day, the sky was wide and blue. I was not too old. I was not useless. I was strong, patient, and wise. And my new life was just beginning.